Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive?
I am. What are we getting into today?
We're gonna tackle a topic that's all over the place right now.
Okay.
Feminism and masculinism.
Ooh, interesting.
But not as like enemies,
Right.
more like two sides of the same coin.
I like that.
So you shared this podcast with us where we've got a self-identified feminist and a masculinist having this pretty intense conversation.
Yeah.
And our mission is to kind of go through their arguments, see where they clash, see where they agree, and like find the nuggets of insight that we can all take away.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love that approach.
What do you think?
I think it's brilliant.
Okay.
These conversations that can get so heated so easily.
Totally,
And framing it that way as two sides of the same coin is spot on because, like, ultimately both perspectives are dealing with the same fundamental questions. Like, what does it actually mean to achieve true gender equality?
Such a big question.
Huge.
So let's start by just getting on the same page about what these terms mean.
Absolutely.
Feminism, masculinism.
Right.
What do they...
Let's hear it straight from the source.
Exactly. Straight from the source. It's so easy to just get lost in like stereotypes and assumptions.
For sure.
So Sophie the feminist in the podcast defines feminism as advocating for equity.
Right.
Not female supremacy.
Right.
And she's very clear that it's about addressing systemic disadvantages that women face, not about claiming that women are inherently better than men.
So it's not about saying women are better.
Yeah.
It's about addressing those systemic imbalances.
So she's drawing a distinction between equality of outcome versus
quality of opportunity.
Yeah. It's not about everybody ending up at the same place. Right. It's about everybody having a fair shot at getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it.
And on the other side, we have Mark Masculinist, who also frames his perspective as being about equality.
Right. Yeah.
But with a different focus.
Got it.
So for him, masculinism is about addressing the issues that disproportionately affect men.
Okay.
He brings up, the stigma around men's mental health.
Right.
The challenges men face in custody battles and the growing educational gap between boys and girls.
So both are aiming for equality.
Yes.
But their starting points and their areas of emphasis are different.
Very different.
I'm already seeing the potential for both overlap and tension.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this difference in focus really comes to the forefront when they start discussing areas where their perspectives clash.
Ooh, I want to hear about this.
Yeah.
Where do they clash?
One of the big ones is this idea of toxic masculinity.
Ooh.
Big one.
That's a big one these days.
Oh, yeah. That phrase gets thrown around a lot.
Everywhere.
But what does it actually mean
in
the context of this conversation?
Yeah, what are they saying about it?
Well, Mark criticizes feminism for what he sees as, attributing societal problems to this concept of toxic masculinity.
Okay, so he doesn't like that.
Yeah, he's pushing back on that a little bit.
Okay.
He argues that it unfairly places blame on men for issues that are far more complex. Okay.
He uses the statistic that men are far more likely to commit suicide.
That's a big one.
Yeah, it's heavy. And he's suggesting that feminism doesn't adequately address...
Okay, so that's his critique?
That's his take.
What about Sophie?
Sophie counters by arguing that feminism actually does address the root causes of these issues.
Right.
And that toxic masculinity is one of them.
So she's saying that these harmful norms and expectations around what it means to be a man ultimately hurt everyone.
Exactly.
Not just men.
Not just men.
So we've got two very different interpretations of this toxic masculinity concept. Is it a valid critique of harmful societal norms?
Yeah.
Or is it an oversimplification that unfairly demonizes men?
It's a big question.
It is a big question.
And a lot hinges on how you define the term. For sure.
And what you see as its root causes.
Absolutely.
Legitimately.
Yeah, what do you think, listening?
As we move forward in this discussion.
It's a question worth pondering.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it brings up a crucial point.
Okay, what's that?
How do we even have these conversations?
Right.
Without falling into the trap of overgeneralizations and finger pointing.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in the us versus them.
The us versus them mentality.
And I have a feeling that's not going to lead us anywhere productive.
I have a feeling you're right. Yeah. I think so too.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah. And that's where things get interesting.
Okay.
Because even with all that friction, Sophie and Mark actually find some common ground.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, it's interesting.
After that toxic masculinity debate, I'd be curious to hear where they see eye to eye.
Well, they both acknowledge the harm caused by those rigid gender stereotypes.
Okay.
And they both see a need for more balanced and nuanced portrayals of both genders in the media.
You know, it's funny, as you say that, I'm thinking about how often we see men and women pitted against each other in the media. Like, it's always this conflict.
It's like this constant narrative of conflict and competition. And I think that speaks to that us versus them trap we were talking about.
If we're always looking at it through this lens of opposition, it's going to be hard to find solutions that work for everyone.
It makes it that much harder.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is Sophie the feminist even expresses a willingness to consider how feminism could be more inclusive of men's issues without losing sight of the systemic barriers that women face.
So she's not saying throw it all out.
No.
It's more like
how can we broaden this?
Yeah, how can we make it more inclusive? So that seems like a potential opening for a more productive dialogue.
Instead of who's right, who's wrong.
Exactly.
It's more like
it's about
what are the goals we share?
The shared goals.
Yeah, I like that.
And one way to make these abstract concepts more tangible is to look at specific examples.
Love it.
So, for instance, Mark brings up the point that boys are falling behind in education.
Okay.
And he argues that policies aimed at uplifting girls have inadvertently created an unequal outcome. It's interesting for boys.
Yeah, it makes me think of that saying.
What's that?
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Oh, yeah.
Like, sometimes, even when we're trying to do good, there can be unintended consequences.
Totally.
What does Sophie say to that?
Well, Sophie acknowledges the validity of Mark's concern, but she also provides some historical context.
Okay.
She points out that these policies were initially put in place to address the historical inequalities that had long disadvantaged girls in education.
So it's like what was necessary back then might not be what's needed now.
Exactly. And it might even be causing new problems.
Right. And it makes you think about how we could be more mindful of the long-term effects of the solutions we put in place.
And it highlights the importance of constantly reevaluating our approaches, gathering data, being open to adjusting our course as needed.
So we've got education.
Yep.
What other examples?
Yeah. Well, they also delve into the portrayal of men in the media, which we touched on earlier. And Mark is particularly critical of that dumb dad trope.
Oh, yeah.
He argues that it perpetuates these harmful stereotypes about men's capabilities.
Like men can't be good fathers.
Exactly.
It's so pervasive.
It is.
It's like men are only allowed to be bumbling fools or stoic superheroes.
It's like there's no nuance. And Sophie agrees with him.
Really?
Yeah. She sees those harmful stereotypes as stemming from that same patriarchal system that feminism aims to dismantle.
So they're coming at it.
Yeah. From different angles.
Totally.
But they both recognize that these
narrow portrayals
are hurting everyone.
They are.
And it brings us back to that point about this battle.
The framing it as
men's rights versus women's rights.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what's preventing us from actually finding solutions.
Because when we get caught up in that adversarial mindset, we lose sight of the fact that we're all
part of the same system. What affects one gender affects us all.
Absolutely.
And this podcast really highlights the importance of shifting.
Yeah, shifting from
that competitive framework to one of collaboration. Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we all have a stake in creating a more just
and equitable
world. and equitable world for everyone.
And that sometimes that benefit one gender can have ripple effects that benefit everyone.
Absolutely.
Like
parental leave.
Parental leave.
That's a great example.
A classic example.
Because we often think of that as a women's issue.
A women's issue. But when men
are encouraged and supported to take parental leave.
It not only benefits
fathers and strengthens
families.
But it also helps challenge those traditional gender roles.
Exactly.
And can even lead to
greater equality.
In the workplace. It's like this thing that seems like it's only about helping one group can actually have these broader
societal benefits.
Yeah, it's about moving beyond that zero-sum mentality and recognizing that we can create solutions that uplift everyone.
We've covered so much.
We have.
And I have to say, I'm really starting to appreciate the nuances of this conversation.
It is nuanced.
It's clear there's no easy fix.
No.
And it's going to take
a lot of
open-mindedness
and
collaboration
to create meaningful change.
Absolutely.
It's about recognizing the shared humanity that connects us all. Despite our differences. Well said.
Thank you.
I'm feeling pretty energized by this conversation. Even though it's dealing with some pretty complex issues.
Heavy stuff.
And I'm eager to hear what final thoughts you have for us.
All right.
As we wrap up this deep dive. Let's do it.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into feminism and masculinism, I'm feeling like we've only just scratched the surface.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing.
Okay.
It means you're engaging with the complexity of these ideas.
That's true.
It's not about finding all the answers.
Right.
It's more about developing a deeper understanding of the questions themselves.
I think one of the biggest takeaways for me has been the importance of moving beyond those simplistic us versus them narratives
that we see everywhere.
Yeah.
It's so easy to fall
into those traps.
Yeah, like those binary traps.
Yeah.
But as we saw from this podcast, the reality is way more nuanced and interconnected.
That moment in the podcast where Sophie the feminist acknowledges Mark's concerns about boys' education.
Yes.
It would have been easy for her to just dismiss him.
Totally.
But she didn't.
She didn't.
She engaged with it.
She did and provided
core context.
Exactly. That's such a great example of how it can move beyond those knee-jerk reactions.
It was gut reactions.
Yeah. And actually listen. Even when we disagree.
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find we have more in common.
Totally. Yeah. Like with the parental leave.
Yeah.
It's framed as a women's issue.
Right.
But it helps everyone.
It does.
So as we wrap up, what are some questions or insights you hope our listeners will?
I think the most important thing is encouraging continued reflection and exploration.
Okay. Yeah.
You know? Don't just take our word for it.
Right.
Go out, do your own research.
Love it.
Challenge your own assumptions.
Yeah.
Have those sometimes uncomfortable conversations.
Definitely.
About gender and equality.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah.
By the complexity.
For sure.
But approach it with curiosity.
Curiosity.
And a willingness to learn.
And remember, there's no one right way.
That's true.
To think about these things, this conversation. It's constantly evolving.
It is. So much to think about.
I know.
I want to leave our listeners with one final
hit me.
Thought-provoking question as you continue to navigate these conversations about gender and equality.
Yeah.
What kind of world do you want to help create?
That's a beautiful question.
Yeah.
It invites us to step into a space of agency and responsibility.
We're not.
We're just passive observers.
We're active participants.
Exactly.
And we have the power
to shape the future.
So to our listeners, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
On this deep dive.
Yeah.
Keep those minds open.
Keep learning.
Keep those conversations going.
Keep talking.
And keep striving.
For a more just and equitable world.
For everyone.
For everyone.
Absolutely.